Hello and welcome to the Next 100 Days podcast. My name is Graham Arrowsmith.
And my name's Kevin Appleby. And Graham, sitting here in Northumberland a couple of weeks before Christmas, I've actually found that it's warmer in Chicago from today's day.
Well, it's not snowy yet in Yorkshire, but I have to say it's a bit chilly, and it looks like it's going to be sort of around 0 to -1 Celsius, which whatever that is in Fahrenheit, I have no idea. But basically, I am sure our guest, Brian O'Neill, from about an hour out of Chicago, mercifully. And Brian, welcome to the Next 100 Days podcast.
Graham, Kevin, great to be on. Really look forward to chatting with you guys today. Appreciate it.
And you're wearing, obviously, an important T-shirt, and it says Chicago Cubs. Now, I'm not quite sure what do they do?
The Cubs are our baseball team. So the Chicago Cubs is the pride of the North Side, as we call it. We have actually two teams in Chicago. We have the White Sox and the Cubs. The Cubs are on the North Side. The White Sox are on the South Side. So it's really kind of division of the two sides of Chicago. And for me, I married a Cubs fan, and when I moved here almost 20 years ago, I had really no other choice. Otherwise, I wasn't going to be married to her for very long. I have seen her, but she's a very lovely looking lady. But basically, she's about a foot less tall than you. I mean, you tower over. I don't know what she picked. She must have picked. You must have been. Your feet must have been in the ground when she met you. But I mean, but what can I say? So she was the Cubs fan then, and she dragged you into that franchise. She did. I'm actually from South Florida, so I've been here for 20 years. And I met her and married her here. By the way, the height thing. I'm 6'7", so I make everybody look small.
Wow,
height wise.
That's right.
But yes.
Well, it must have been the sort of temperate Florida air, but where you are now, obviously it's a bit chillier there. But I know in Rhode Island, I went to see a baseball game there, and it felt like it lasted 3 days. But we left after about 6 hours, but they kept going through the night. I've got to say, I mean, we like football, which is soccer to you, but and at least that's 90 minutes and then you're done. But this one, it was like waiting for Godot. I mean, crikey, what did they do? It's like they couldn't hit the bloody ball. I don't understand, Kevin. Have you ever seen a baseball game?
I got confused. I went to see, we had a big post-engagement review on a major project we did, and we ended up doing it in New York. So obviously we went off to see the Yankees. We got into Yankee Stadium, and they got there, and they got to half-time. They came out for the second half. Then they had half-time again. They came out for the third half.
Oh, right.
And then eventually they're in the seventh half. And
you see, they get hungry really quickly in America, don't they? I mean, I'm sorry, Brian, we're having a bit of a go. We don't mean to do this. It's just how we are. But, well, you'll need a lot of fuel as well. 6'7" of you, crikey.
I do have to eat a lot, yes, and I agree on the games. The games are a bit long, so it's a good thing they serve food and other beverages at the game.
Beds as well, apparently.
We need that. Yeah.
But anyway, beyond that, it was a lovely. I've got to say that the environment, the people were so friendly. It was a lovely occasion, but we'd had enough of it after about 5 hours.
I know the podcast we recorded this morning was all about football with Michael Happel, but come on, this one's got to have some business content in it.
It does, yes. No, you're absolutely right. I have one question for you, which is you have a website called W2 Prison Break. Now, what does W2 mean?
Yes, definitely an American term that we refer to as if somebody has a W2 job. Right. So right. It's so you're in a job where you're being paid by a corporation. We call it a W-2. And it's just because of the way that we get a form for filing our taxes at the end of the year. Yes. So the idea of the site is breaking out of the W-2 prison, if you will. Yeah. So that's where the name comes from.
Makes you a perfect fit for this podcast.
It does.
Right. Graham and I are both escapees from that sort of environment, and we recognize that a lot of our audience are escapees. And one of the original concepts we had around the next 100 days was, well, if you're going to do that, what do you do in the next 100 days? either to get escaped, or what do you do once you've escaped in the next 100 days to establish yourself in something else?
Yeah, great question. And I love the mission of the podcast. I was actually thinking about this for the last several days. And, one of the mistakes that business owners will make is they go from, again, I know you don't use W-2, but I'm going to use it here for references. You go from your job and then you become an employee or a W-2 employee in your business, right? And it's a lot of it is just that it's no fault to the business owner. It's just that's what you've been accustomed to. That's what you've been trained to think for so long. But I was in a corporate job for 25 years, right? Yeah. So I had my one job to do. I was very, very good at it. It was a sales job. And the other people above me did everything else. They worried about how the business ran and whether or not the systems and processes and the right people are in place. Now I go from doing that to having my own business. And all of a sudden I'm responsible for all that stuff. And I don't really know how to do it. Yeah. So I'm still learning, but that's really what I would say to anyone who's looking at starting their own business. You have to be ready for that. Most people are not mentally prepared or not ready to make that transition from being a W-2 employee to becoming a business owner. It's not something you can just flip a light switch on. In a lot of cases, you end up working more and have less time and feel more stressed out in some cases.
Yeah. That's a fantastic point you're making. And I have to say that you've got a free guide to, shall we say, jumpstarting your W-2 prison break. So basically you're getting out of corporate, as we would refer it to, and you're getting into your own business. There is a download available on w2prisonbreak.com, and you can download that and probably join your list, and you can get more information. But what's the essence of that guide? What is it telling us? What are the big takeaways?
Yeah, the biggest takeaways, Graham, would be, I appreciate the question, is kind of alluded to what I just said to you before, which is most people are not ready, right? So in the guide, I've just said, I've learned a lot over the last, 20-something years trying to leave my job. Yeah. And I really think that you need to have an understanding or go through a transformation. Some people need to go through a transformation. They're just, like I said, their mind's not in the right place. And you need to, number one, we get so distracted by doing something different. Like our mind is constantly looking for distractions, right? Which is, how the shiny object syndrome, and not being singularly focused. That was me for a long time. I mean, you name the business, I looked at it and I kind of like dipped my toe into it. Yeah. It wasn't until I became singularly focused on one thing that my timeline to leave my job, I named my real estate business over 7 years ago. And I never did a deal until I fixed a bunch of stuff, which is in the guide. So my timeline went from 7 years down to 9 months. I was able to leave my job. And it was because I did a few things. I had the transformation. I hired a coach. I was singularly focused on one thing and I did it very well. And that's why I was able to go from, this corporate job that I didn't really like and being able to have my own business and make my own way in such a short amount of time. And it's just a few tweaks. There's 5 steps. There's 5 steps in there. And it really starts about transforming your mind, the way you're thinking, and evaluating where it is that you are right now. That's super important. I think a lot of people skip that step. Hey, where am I right now? Mm-hmm. Be okay with it. Where do I want to go? Versus just, hey, that looks like a good thing I could do. I could do some wholesaling. I could do some, online business. I could open up a franchise. Yeah. Figure out what you want to do, what lights you up, and write it out in great detail, and then go find someone to help you get the result that you want.
Yeah. That's really important.
I think that is so true. Focus on one thing. I can relate to that very much myself. And one of the hardest things to do, the idea bit, the shiny object bit, a bit of initial setup, is actually quite easy. Taking from that initial setup to actually something that's monetized and works takes a huge amount of effort. And I think because it takes so much effort, you're often seeing the other shiny object and thinking, oh, well, this thing that I'm doing, it's not monetizing greatly at the moment. I'll do that instead. But then you hit the same problem with that next thing, that you get to that point. And really focus on one thing, to me, is a very, very clear message, because you aren't going to get from initial setup into something that works unless you take the time and push through.
I agree 1,000,000%. And it's hard for a lot of people to do that. It's difficult for me to do it, even to this day, is to focus on one thing. And I know it. And I still, this thing over here is kind of interesting. Like, let me start a podcast,
Yeah. Oh, wow. I mean, and the thing is, you're doing it on your own, Brian. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, and I listened to a little bit of it, and I have to say, you're very good. And one of the things you're good at, you're good with questions. Now, I wonder whether or not that makes you, and I think it does, it makes you a better coach. I mean, on your website, you have a testimonial from a chap. And one of the things I remember from what he said was how important it was to him was the way in which you phrased or way in which you asked a question that made him think deeply. That's you, isn't it? That's what you're about.
Yeah, it is. And, Graham, I appreciate you saying that. And it was very, when I first got that testimonial from the gentleman on my site, I was a little surprised to hear it because, as a salesperson for most of my life, you know how salespeople are. They're constantly telling you how great they are and how great their thing is.
Yeah.
But what I discovered, especially through my real estate business, and again, I was coached. I have a coach, mentor. I believe he's been on your podcast. I really learned how to listen to people, right?
Sure.
So in my real estate business, when I talk to somebody trying to sell their house, if I talk to them for 10 minutes, I might be speaking 2 minutes and they're talking for eight minutes. And I'm gathering information. Hey, does this person have a problem that I can help them with? Right. And you do that with human beings. Number one, that's how you build rapport. And in your business, you always need to be listening and looking for clues, looking for points of pain where you might be able to offer your solution versus be like, hey, this is what I do. This is how much it costs. I'm so great at this. Like, nobody cares about that.
Yeah.
Care about what their issue is, and you got to find that out and solve that. So it took a lot of practice and skill to get there.
Yeah.
I still like to talk a lot, trust me, but I have to listen.
Yeah, well, no, I get that, and we all do, don't we? But at the end of the day, I think one of the things about yourself is that it seems to me that you've got away from corporate, from your W2 job, and effectively you've moved into your own realm, and now you're starting to probably sensibly add bits to it. Podcast gets you in a network of people, and it brings people towards you. You've got coaching, you've got courses on the way. It's all a considered plan, isn't it? I mean, is this your coach helping you, or is this 9/10 you anyway?
Yeah, it's a good mix of both, Graham. And we're all constantly searching for whether we choose to recognize it or not. We're all constantly searching for the reason that we're here. Like, why is it that we're here?
Yeah.
So I look at the 25 years that I was in corporate and the 17 years that I was stuck in a job that I didn't like, flying 100,000 miles a year, missing my son grow up when he was very small and being away from my wife.
Yeah.
I look at that as, okay, I had to go through this because there's a bunch of other people that are going through it right now. They don't have to. No. So that's why I have the coaching business. That's why I have the podcast. And that's why I'm putting out videos on YouTube and just sharing my story as much as possible, because the more I started to share it, the more it resonated with people, and people would say, hey, that's me. So there's no reason for you to do what I did, right? We can shorten the gap. I've learned a lot. So I really do feel like that's my purpose. And that's what's drawing me and getting me out of bed in the morning.
Yeah. And presumably your wife, who seems to wear the trousers in your family, it seems that way anyway.
Clearly, of course. Yes.
What would she say about you? What would she say your biggest strengths are if she was like, come on, tell the truth?
Yeah. And I would say that she would tell me that I'm very focused. I'm very dedicated. I'm certainly, I have good habits.
Yeah.
Those are the good things that she would say about me.
Right, move on to the things we really wanted to hear. But no, I guess we all have things that we have to improve on. But you say you were stuck in the job. You did 25 years in corporate.
Mhm.
Was it the last 17 years that you felt, oh, crikey, I'm just repeating the same year, another, 17 times sort of thing? What was it about the job that made you think to yourself, I really have to get out of this place?
Yeah, it was okay. So I didn't dislike my job. I just didn't like being away. And I knew that there was something bigger for me. I knew that I had something more in me to give and to do. I just didn't know what it was. And now, fortunately and unfortunately, I made a good salary. I earned good money with my job. I didn't have to work a lot. As we get older, we start to coast, right?
Yeah.
And I was very safe and comfortable and secure. But when I got older, I started to realize that, hey, if I want to move up and I want to push my income up, I'm either going to have to find a side gig or I'm going to have to trade my time for dollars and go into corporate, which I did not want to do. Now, here's the big reason. I have a son. He's 11 years old now. But at the time when I was flying 100,000 miles a year and I was gone, I was all over Europe. I was just everywhere. I'd gone every other week. When he started to get old, I'd come back and he looked different. He would speak different.
Yeah.
That really started to eat away at me. And then one day he told me, I was maybe 5 or 6 years old. He said, "Hey, Dad, I don't like it when you leave. I'm scared to be in the house with Mom by myself."
Mm.
And that was, the straw that broke the camel's back, if you will. And I remember saying to my wife, I said, "He's never going to say that to me again." Yeah. So I had to find a way to get out. And it was shortly after that, it's about 3 years ago, where I found real estate. I found a coach, I hired him. And then again, 9 months later, I'm out of the job.
Yeah.
And now I don't have to fly anymore.
And the coach you're talking about is Chris Prefontaine, isn't it?
Chris Prefontaine, yes.
Yeah, and his podcast. Anybody listen to this want to check in on Chris? It was about 3 or 4 podcasts ago, and he basically was the smart real estate coach. So, but the way in which he put that across is you had to have the smarts to get your head around it. But you didn't have to have you didn't have to travel that far because there's a load of opportunities on your doorstep.
There was, and it was just a matter of, finally getting to the point where, hey, look, I'm just not going to let fear run my life anymore. Sure. And that's what was happening. I was too afraid to try because, hey, if I mess up, I'm gonna leave this cushy corporate job that has benefits and security and retirement plan. It was all nonsense. It really was.
Yeah.
And I couldn't see it. And Chris helped me with that. I remember when I left my job and I had enough income. I was good in a position to leave and I was still scared to leave. And I said, "Chris, I'm thinking about leaving now. My business is going really well." I said, "But what if this?" And he said, "Brian, the risk is the job. The risk is the job." And it just hit me like a ton of bricks. I never looked at it that way. And he was so right. Like they could let me go at any single point. Right. I'm just a person on paper. I know, we're friends and everything at the job, but
yeah,
the company has been doing fine without me.
Yeah. They always go on. I know that.
Yeah.
I mean, so does Kevin. I mean, we've worked for large companies and even though you had a stellar time there and you did some things that are still happening and still making them money, means nothing to you. And you're like, somebody said to me once that when you leave a company, it's a bit like dropping a pebble into one of those sort of round bucket things. And when the sort of waves of the pebble sort of stop, that's when they forget about you. It happens really quickly. And just take that for what it means, because at the end of the day, you don't really owe them anything. You did a huge amount of good whilst you were there. And if you were traveling around the world, they truly trusted you to do a great job, and you were doing a good job. But the one person you weren't doing a great job for was your son at that time.
No, I was not. My son, my family, you think you are because you have to provide and you have to do this, and you get caught, especially as men, right? Egotistical, and thinking like there's no other way out. There's no other way to do this. And that's why I say you really have to go through a mindset shift. I had started working on my mindset long before I met Chris.
Yeah.
And started working on my transformation. he was just the person who helped me propel my business and give me the confidence to do something different and have the support. He still coaches me today. We had an interview this morning at, bright and early at 7 a.m. Chicago time. So,
wow.
I'll always, one of the biggest mistakes I made, and if anyone's listening, who that is thinking about coaching and mentoring, and Chris says the same thing too. For some reason, I don't know why it is. Maybe it's a man thing. I'm not sure, but we have coaches and mentors our entire lives growing up, right? Whether we're involved in, sports, school, if we're in the church, college, then we get out and it's like, okay, I'm good. I got it all figured out. I'm good now. I'll just do my job. That was me. And I stayed in the same place as a result for a long time. It wasn't until I hired a coach. I will never be without a coach and mentor again in my life. I have multiple coaches right now,
right?
But that's really been the difference maker. Is making the investment in yourself versus buying all this stuff that is meaningless and doesn't pay me a return or do anything for me, right? Other than make me feel good or look good.
Sure. Wow. On your website, you're talking about the mindset shift. You talk about the 3 biggest fears around leaving your job. I mean, Kevin, let's put Kevin on the spot because, he's a bright chap. What do you think one of those fears is, Kevin?
Well, I can only think of myself, and who should have left corporate probably 12, 24 months before he did. Yeah. Only did it the day that our transformation director called the transformation team into the office and said, look, guys, we tried to turn this business around. We failed. We've been doing cost reduction. The next thing we've got to do is fire ourselves. Why didn't I leave earlier? It was the risk of stepping. You're enjoying what you do, and it's the risk of stepping out into the unknown. And where's the paycheck coming from next month? That's probably the biggest fear.
Yeah, it's the money side of it.
Yeah.
Well, I guess that's one of them. I mean, there's at least, assuming that is one of them, Brian. Assuming that there's another 2. What are the 3 that you've got in mind?
Yeah, what I've come to find in my experience with talking to a lot of people is obviously money is right at the top of the list. Fear of losing money, reputation, fear of trying something and looking silly in front of your family or friends or other people, people who are telling you shouldn't do that, you can't do that.
So it's not a loss of reputation because you had this big job like Kevin working in a very prestigious job. He loses that sort of reputational down the pub, I'm doing this really important stuff. And now he's doing his own stuff and it doesn't sound quite as important.
Right. Especially if you fail. Right.
Yeah.
So I think there's the fear of the failure piece and then looking silly.
Yeah.
There in itself is a big lesson to learn because once we're out on our own, the way we do learn is quite often through failing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know who tells the story, but I've heard it so many times. You never think about it, but if it's when a baby learns to walk.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. They just keep doing it. They keep trying until they eventually walk. And we as humans, older humans, can't wrap our head around that. That's what's supposed to happen.
Brian, having heard that a lot since setting up by myself outside of corporate, really interesting having 2 young grandsons recently and just watching them go through this stage, watching in particular how they learn. And not just walking, it's everything they do. They learn purely by experimenting, not looking to be taught, and effectively by failure. They'll realize that something doesn't work. And they'll probably try the same thing half a dozen times until they try a little variation on it that works a bit better.
Okay, we've got reputation, we've got money. What's the third area?
Yeah, and this may be, I may have to unpack this a little bit, but it's really the fear of losing your time, right? If you try something and it doesn't work, you're giving up your time. I mean, everyone's excuse, I shouldn't say everyone, but a lot of people's excuse is I don't have enough time.
Okay.
I don't have enough time.
I think you probably need to unpack that because I'm thinking, well, all of a sudden you're on your own. Like Kevin, I did as well. And I certainly had the first, not the second one so much. I figured that, wherever I was, I'm me, and I was always a bit of an awkward one, even in corporate. It's a sort of anti-establishment figure. But basically, that said, I was on my own then. Maybe falling flat on my face, yeah, that would have occurred to me. But this last, you might have to unpack that a little bit more, because I know you've got time, but time's yours at that point, isn't it? And even if, like Kevin says, even if you kind of fell over a bit, well, it's learning, and you just move on. As long as you can survive, then if you run out of money, then, well, fair enough. But is there something else that we should understand about this not utilizing your time? Is it because you're falling behind your plan? Or?
Yeah, I think that because I think a lot of folks who are looking at starting their own business, most aren't jumping off the ledge right away. It's like they do something on the side, kind of like I did. I mean, some people just leave, right? And that's, hey, if you have the ability to do that, great.
Yeah,
I would never suggest that, but people are doing both at the same time, right? So I think that if you combine the money fear, like, hey, I'm going to lose money, I'm going to potentially look stupid and lose my reputation here. It's the time aspect as well. They don't want to dedicate the 10 or 12 or 15 hours a week extra. Already they're feeling like, hey, I don't have enough time to do anything. I can't even do my job. I just don't have enough time to start another business. Yeah. There's that fear associated around time. And it's really more like time management. So that's what I help people with, is to have an understanding of what it is that they're doing. Most of us are doing, I shouldn't say most of us, but a lot of us are doing stuff that doesn't matter.
Yes.
We're doing things that don't matter. And we don't even realize we're doing things that don't matter. And which is why I love your, next 100 days and your singular focus. If you can do one thing well for the next year, your life's going to be completely different. If you can do that for 10 years, you're going to be set for life.
At this point, I'd love to plug a book that in the last 12, 18 months I've found fantastic. It's called 168 Hours by Laura van der Kam. And one of the things Laura gets you to do in there is to actually take an audit. 168 hours, the number of hours in a week. She's basically saying, how do you use your 168 hours? And do a time audit. What are you doing? And she, over the last 10 years, has kept a spreadsheet every week, recording what she does in every 15-minute chunk of a day. She's taken it to extremes, but
she wasn't an accountant by any chance, was she, Kevin?
She's a journalist. But try it over a week or a fortnight. I have, and it becomes really revealing.
Yeah,
how much time you do fritter away on pointless stuff.
Yeah, interesting.
I love it. I've done it. I have not read that book, but I've done that exercise, and it's pretty eye-opening. It's grueling. It's painful. It's not something you want to do, which is kind of ironic, because you say, well, I don't have the time to do that. I don't have the time to track my time every 15 minutes.
There's an irony there, I guess. But can you, because I'm sure, are you still doing it, first of all? Or did you just move on?
Say that again. I'm sorry, Graham.
Are you still tracking your time in the same way as you did in that exercise?
Yeah, I will do that exercise. I probably should do it more often than I should. Whenever I tell Chris, hey, I'm my bandwidth's at like 105%, he says, "We'll do the time audit again." And so I'll do it when he tells me. Yeah. I do it about once a year.
Sure, but
I'm actually doing one at the moment. Just trying to get a couple of things back in balance, and I'm just trying to say, well, how much time am I actually spending on work stuff right now?
And you conclude?
I conclude probably far more than I should do.
Fair enough.
Think about it, Graham. Once you're running your own business, in corporate, it's nicely contained in a 9 to 5, and even then, you look at the 9 to 5 you spend in corporate. How much of it was having a conversation with somebody at the next desk or at the coffee machine or whatever? You did not work 37 hours a week.
But it was the bit that really ground me at the time, and it's not the same as the distances in the UK are quite short relative to the United States. But it was travelling down on between Yorkshire and London on the train, and it was a very grueling 2.5 hours. But if every now and again it did happen, the train broke down, or somebody had managed to launch themselves from a bridge somewhere and splattered on the train track. That meant you were basically stuck for hours. And it was just that warriorness of you were always struggling. That was on top of the work you were doing. That was just the table stakes. And so, a lot of people will probably resonate with that, because it can be that commuting, and even in using a car, the motorways or freeways or what you have in America. I was in America a couple of months ago, and in your home state of Florida, and I couldn't believe how many cars there were on the motorway, on the roads. Mm-hmm. It was scary. It was literally scary. But I just think those sorts of things are time sucks. And I don't know if that's factored into your time usage.
But one of the things I think I've discovered is, you used to work probably a 35, 40-hour week in corporate, 9 to 5, and you would waste a lot of time during that period. Now, you look at running your own business, and you're probably no longer constrained by those times. You're doing stuff way before 9 o'clock in the morning. You're probably sitting in front of the telly, filling in your VAT return at 9 o'clock in the evening or something like that. You work the hours out that you've actually been doing, not just attending your place of work, which is the corporate definition, but actually doing solid value-adding stuff. Yeah. And you'll suddenly find that the value-adding stuff you're doing is probably double at least what you used to do in corporate.
For sure.
I agree 100%. I've shifted from I take control of my day. That's the thing I do, and when I was in my corporate, it was like I was in reaction mode from the moment I woke up to the second I went to bed. I was in reaction mode. So that's an easy thing to flip. You just have to, number one, acknowledge it, and then take control of it. I control my day every single day. Now, do things come at me? Yes, they do. But I still have control. I still have a choice over what I do and when I do it. One of the biggest things I've come to really embrace, and I laugh at it now, is email. I mean, I used to just be constantly looking at stuff coming into my email, and now it's like I check it maybe 3 times a week, maybe. I've missed nothing. You don't miss anything.
No. Well, I'm hats off to you doing that, and and the other thing that what you'll learn working with you on your website there is do what you love. Now I like that. I do like that, and actually, if I have a handful of messages on my gravestone, I think that might be one of them. Because to be honest with you, I've never really found it easy for other people to tell me what I should love.
Yeah, you got to figure it out for yourself. I had a great mentor who made me do an exercise like, hey, write out what lights you up, write out the stuff that you love. I mean, I firmly believe that everyone can develop a business around what they're passionate about. Is it going to replace your income? No, maybe it will, but what matters to you more, money or being happy, right? And you can find other ways to earn money without trading your time for dollars. Sure. And do something that you enjoy. Wake up every day and do something you love instead of, I don't even want to get out of bed, right? Yeah. I think that's a lot. I think a lot of people feel that way, and they feel stuck. And then, all of a sudden 1 year turns into 5 and 10 and 20, all of a sudden, hey, I regret not doing it all those years. And that's who I'm trying to reach, and that's who I'm trying to help, because that was me.
Yeah.
So Brian, you're doing that, you're doing the help side, but you're also doing the real estate side. Real estate's clearly the thing that's bringing the money in. Mm-hmm. In your case, is the passion in the helping or in the real estate? Or is it both?
Yeah, the passion, the reason I got started in real estate is I saw it as a way out of my job from an income standpoint. Yeah, okay. Sure. And I wasn't prepared for the people that I was going to be able to help. I help people move on. I buy their houses. I help other people get into homes. Yeah. I'm way more passionate about what I'm doing now, and my real estate business, I'm still building it, but I'm getting it to the point where I have the proper systems and people in place so that I don't have to be engaged in it on a daily basis. And I can go out and do the things that light me up, as I say. It doesn't happen overnight. In the beginning, it was just me doing the real estate business. I did it all myself, right? Now I have a team, and I'm able to kind of pull away more so that I can look at some other opportunities that, as I said, light me up.
Yeah. And that's really important, isn't it? Because it's not wrong. And you must discuss this with Chris anyway, but it's not wrong to have that dream that you're using the real estate as a bridge to, and it's a financial bridge up to a point. It's a security bridge. It's a security blanket, if you like. But you then move on to a place where you're really making a difference in certain people's lives with the skill set that you've developed and developing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm not lost on the fact that not everybody wants to. I mean, real estate is it's such a, I don't want to say it's crowded, but it's crowded on your social media feed if you're looking for ways to make money. Everyone talks about real estate. While that may sound attractive, like the end result,
sure,
you may not want to do that. That may not be something you're excited about, talking to people, talking to sellers, and trying to buy houses and deal with contractors and everything that comes with real estate.
Sure.
And that's why I encourage people to go through that exercise. I mean, a lot of the clients that I work with, I ask them, one of the questions I ask them, I'm like, do you know what lights you up? They don't know. And that tells me that we need to start with the evaluation phase, which is, hey, let's talk about what your situation is right now. Where are you right now? Like I walk through people through their day. What people do on a daily basis tells you a lot about where they are right now. And then you can kind of help them chart a path to where they want to go.
So given that you're relatively new at this, what are the things that you're doing that, if somebody else wanted to sort of follow your lead, as it were, what are the things that you're doing to attract people to you for the bit of your life that you are truly lit up?
Yeah, I do a lot of, number one, I share and I'm vulnerable. Okay. I think that, and I would encourage people to do that, to share your story. Like, you may not think your story is valuable, or maybe you're tired of hearing it, or maybe you're tired of telling it. I promise you somebody needs to hear it. Okay. Chris used to tell me, because I'm like, they're sick of hearing about my son and the flying 100,000 miles a year. He says, no, they're not. I was at a live event in September, and I told the story on stage. I had a line of people at the cocktail hour waiting to speak to me, to tell me, hey, what you said about your son really resonated with me. And I'm not saying this to brag the line, but it was just the light bulb went off. Like, okay, people do need to hear this and they want to hear it. So sharing and being vulnerable, what ends up happening is you share more and more about the story about your life, and you connect with people. So tell people what you do, what you've been through, if you're looking to do something like this, and get it out there. I mean, it's daunting for a lot of people to speak and be in front of people. I started a podcast, I started a YouTube channel. Like, I was afraid of being on camera and speaking, and you just have to do it. Now I'm not. I'm on a bunch of shows. I have my own podcast. I have a YouTube channel. I'm putting out stuff on social media all the time. And the response has been great. I mean, you always have the people who are like, hey, get off there, you idiot, that type of stuff, but that's okay.
If I do that, Kevin just says that all the time. I just ignore it. But I have to say, the fact that you're going, you've got your own podcast, which is a really good podcast. Tell people what it's called.
It's called the W2 Prison Break Show, and we have an episode every Wednesday. Yeah. And the mission of the show is to help 1 million people, to inspire and educate them to get to that point where they can start the business around their passion.
Wow. And the lawyers from Prison Break, the TV show, they'll be after you, won't they? They'll be thinking, yeah, that's our copyright, that.
Yeah, you know what? I thought about that. We'll see what happens. I guess that wouldn't be the worst thing in the world.
No.
That'd be great publicity.
Yeah.
Suddenly I'm a best-selling podcast.
No, good for you. And but no, I like that. I love the fact that you're trying to help people. You're doing that first, and then people start queuing up and wanting to get in touch with you. And I mean, let's face it, we're over here in the UK. So if you were to coach people over here, it'd be using Zoom, presumably.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And
most people I coach are via Zoom. Yes.
Well, because even in the United States, it's not like you can jump in a car and go and see them. You know, so basically, then, presumably your clients are global then.
Yeah, all of them are in the U.S. And then, yeah, but I mean, look, I haven't really been. This is the first international show that I've been on. So I mean, wonderful, thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's I think the struggles and the challenges will be the same regardless of where you are globally, right?
Yeah. The thing is, if we have listeners over here and in other English speaking countries and some non-English speaking countries, I know there's some very, very capable people in places like India, for instance, who speak English like it's their first language, but it isn't. But those people listening to the show, if they wanted to get in touch with you, what's the best route for them?
Yeah, so you can obviously grab the guide on the website. I offer free strategy sessions if it's something you want to look at, and that's in the book. But I'll give my email. I don't have any problem with it because it's on all of my platforms. It's Brian, Brian, at w2prisonbreak.com.
Well, that's easy to remember, Kevin.
Very easy to remember. And of course, Graham will put it in the show notes.
We certainly will. And I have to say, it's been an absolute pleasure, Brian, having you on the next 100 Days podcast. Thank you.
It's been great. Thanks, guys, for having me. I really enjoyed the chat. And I can't say enough about the accents. I love them.
So, W2 Prison Break.
Yeah.
A lovely different concept on our regular phrase of corporate escape, Graham.
Yeah, I know. It took me a little while because when I was researching this, I was thinking, what the heck is W2? But it's some kind of form that you fill in. But and I suppose if you're in America, you'd understand that.
It's probably the American equivalent of our P60.
Well, I don't know about that, but it whatever it is, the whole idea of how he's got out of that prison. And if you like, it was such an emotional story when he told us about his young son. On the website, there's a picture of his young son and his wife, etc. And, for his son to say that to him, that really stood him back, didn't it?
Oh, things like that make a big difference. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because at the end of the day, we it's about our families first. For many of us anyway, and if you're not serving that constituency in your life, then, what's the point of the rest of it when you bust in a gut? And I know we're driven in lots of different ways. And I think for years, Brian probably saw, just like we did, that, the effort that you put into corporate and a few little baubles that you got every now and again saying, well done this and well done that. And that good feeling, it's not enough sometimes. And you have to sort of give yourself the chance to be around and be there for your family.
And sometimes there's just a light bulb moment comes on. You realize his light bulb moment was young child saying, I don't feel safe, Dad. No. I remember another guest that we had who was working at 1 o'clock in the morning and saying, well, why am I doing this? Going the next day and resigning.
Yeah, no, we've had some stories on this podcast.
It's moments like that. I suppose I hung around in corporate far too long, but I had a similar thing. I was getting fed up of traveling and being away from home every week of the year.
Yeah, I mentioned that I didn't like the 2.5 hour. Mate, it was 2.5 hours from Leeds. It was not. It was another half an hour train back over here. But so the truth of it is, it was a pretty long journey, and of course, you didn't get any kind of sympathy from the people in the south because, frankly, weirdly, although on the map it's the same distance, it's a lot longer if you're coming from the south to the north.
That's a very interesting one, Graham. That was always a gripe of mine. Now, Northern consultant turns up on a Southern project. You're expected to be there at 9:30 on a Monday morning.
Yeah,
Southern consultant comes to a project up in the north. Now they'll roll in at lunchtime.
Yeah, I know, because it's a state of mind that. And but anyway, I'd love to hear if you disagree with that as a point of view, and you do live in London or the southeast. Tell us your story when you last got into Yorkshire or Newcastle before 10 o'clock in the morning. But that's being generous, isn't it? I mean, 9 o'clock maybe would be the better measure. Anyway, but on that gripey bombshell, I've been Graham Arrowsmith.
And I've been Kevin Appleby for the first time in 2023.
Oh, yeah. Well, Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year.